let's jump right into it. So tell me, what exactly does Hyperledger do? That's where you work.
Yes, I work in Hyperledger. Hyperledger is an open source project that is hosted by the Linux Foundation, Linux Foundation was founded 20 years ago to promote open source frameworks and tools in business. So it started with core Linux, and I'm sure, how many of you heard about Linux as an operating system? Yeah, okay, so you've heard about it.
It's a good crowd.
So, yeah, we've been founded 20 years ago, started with core Linux. Today we are over 70 different projects, and one of them is Hyperledger. And Hyperledger focuses on bringing the enterprises and global community together to work on blockchain business frameworks and tools.
How do you make money? Because I think a lot of people are here because they want to earn a living, put bread on the table, and make money from blockchain.
Well, Hyperledger is a non-for-profit, so we're not
people want profit here too.
We are not making massive money, but we are member-based. So if you want to become a member of Hyperledger and benefit from the PR, networking, marketing support, so kind of join our gentlemen's club, if you will. We are both in England, so you know what I mean. So if you want to join that club, you become a member and pay a fee. Otherwise, the technology, the special interest groups, collaboration in the open source community is completely free.
One of the reasons, and I'm mentioning profit, I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I cover business and technology. These are companies making massive amounts of money. There's nothing wrong with trying to find a sustainable business. But do you think that aspect has maybe hurt blockchain in some way? The fact that so many people do want to make money from it, are looking for the next big boom, and that's why there is some hype around blockchain?
Sorry for that. So I think that, well, Gartner produced a report saying that we are past the hype. I'm not sure if you read that.
I saw that.
Yeah, and that was like 5 months ago, so we're
agree
way
with
past
that?
the hype. I'm not
There you
thank you. I'm not sure if we are past the hype. I think that we are definitely seeing more and more enterprises looking at reliable and reasonable solutions and use cases. So actually, since 2016, 92% of blockchain projects running in different enterprises, all POCs, is dead now. 92%. Only 8% stayed on for the last 3 years.
So your point being that we've gotten rid of the bad ones, and hopefully we're in a portion now of the good ones.
I think so, yes. And I think that finally we are realizing that we have a technology, we don't have a solution. And so running around with a hammer and looking at which window should we break doesn't really make sense. Let's like find the window that we want to break and then use that hammer. And that's what blockchain is. Blockchain is just a tool. It's not a solution. It's not something that you can sprinkle on your solution to make it better. You have to design with blockchain in mind.
Take a sip of the water since you were coughing a bit. And I'll just tell you that after one of the sessions that I was doing here yesterday, somebody tweeted at me that you're block washing. They use this term that they say describes when people just throw up blockchain for a solution, even though it's a solution in search of a problem, they were saying. Now, I disagree. The panel that I was on, the people were very upfront about the fact that they want to use lots of technologies. This person on Twitter said, you know, this is something that could have been solved by any other type of technology. It doesn't have to be blockchain. So what do you say about block washing? I mean, it's important to address the criticism. I don't mind being criticized. I didn't agree with him, but let's talk about block washing. Are there too many hammers looking for windows?
There is a beauty in Twitter that also a certain president knows. So I think that it's very easy to do those shortcuts and say block washing, not block washing, and get into the fights. I think that blockchain is an amazing technology, and it changes the way that we interact, the way that businesses are conducted, the way that we can finally create interactions where we don't need trust, because blockchain takes care of the reliability, auditability, and transparency. So I don't need to trust you to work with you on a blockchain. However, it is a technology, and that technology may be part of your solution, but it doesn't necessarily have to. When I see people coming to me and saying, well, you know, this blockchain thing, it's really good, but how about this immutability? Could we just like tweak it so that we can remove things from a blockchain? Or, yeah, I really like the blockchain, but I really don't need the transparency. Can we just remove the transparency? Well, no.
That defeats the purpose.
Yeah, so if you don't like certain parts of blockchain, don't use blockchain. There are better solutions out there.
What are the best solutions that you've seen? What are some of the best projects that maybe you've had a hand on or have come through Hyperledger and you've said, this is incredible technology that really might impact the world and change something that really needs changing?
Well, it really depends. There are the ones that will probably bring people a lot of money, and then there are those that move my heart because I'm
okay, well, let's hear both of them. We want to hear about profit and about doing what's right.
Yeah. So in Hyperledger, we have 270 members today. And these enterprises really work on real applications and real solutions, most of them. So I really love the sustainable supply chain. So we have companies like Equidado or Everledger that track diamonds and prove the provenance of diamonds, prove that they don't come from war zones. We have solutions that allow for sustainable supply chain of food and food trust in general. That's the big use case with Walmart, for instance, or rice supply chain in China. There is also a mango supply chain in Mexico, and another one which is a sustainable coffee supply chain that was also done by Contrast. So there are really interesting examples of how we can make sustainability provable and more trustworthy and thus cheaper, because if we need less audits to prove the food provenance, we don't have to audit that much, so it's cheaper. So then we are inclined to buy the same food, only it's sustainably produced. So these are my very big ones. Then we have
those are the ones you think are the do-good
ones.
Well,
of course. Then we have social impact working group that takes care of all or talks about the non-profit donation tracking. So that's Aid Tech is doing donation tracking and looking at different aspects of that. So these are really cool. In terms of businesses, I think that the next big thing that I've seen from some of our members is secure manufacturing, secure IoT. So places where you have a lot of devices, a lot of participants, you need to build a trust network with different elements that are moving. That's where I think secure supply chain and manufacturing makes a lot of sense, and blockchain really helps with that. So secure updates to machines, for instance.
So secure manufacturing and blockchain, but explain exactly. I heard what you said, but how does that come about? How does it make the situation better or more profitable?
That's a good question. So today you don't really, if you have a manufacturing house where you're producing chips or elements that need to be trusted, like airplane parts or something like things that are elements that are very, very security sensitive or safety sensitive, you don't have a way to reliably track those parts. Make sure that if you produce updates to machines, that these machines have been updated in the right way. You wait for a very long time with updates because you want to test them and secure them, because you don't have a way to revert that. With blockchain, first of all, if you produce parts that are certified, you can start tracking this certification and make sure that you deliver it in time, the right part with the right certification. If something goes wrong, airplane crashes, we know that either the certification was wrong or the part was malproduced or something like that. When it comes to audits, that's even more interesting, because now you can start doing audits that are very rapid, like the Apple model, where you produce a lot of updates very often, because you have a way to track and trace the update processes for the machines. If something goes wrong, again, you have a provable point in time when it went wrong.
I'm just curious, I know you've worked in Bitcoin before, but you're really focused on the non-Bitcoin side of blockchain. We saw this huge bump yesterday. The currency went up about 23% in 1 hour. there was really no news moving the currency, by the way. When I was reporting on this on CNN, I said every analyst I've talked to said that they think this was just a single trader who had a $100 million order, and there's so little liquidity in the Bitcoin market right now that it moved the market. But when you see a big bump like that, a big profit opportunity, I wonder, does it shift your thinking about Bitcoin at all right now? What is, from the blockchain perspective, now that you're not so in Bitcoin, what's your view?
I think, well, Bitcoin is an extremely interesting proof of concept of what blockchain can do. And I'm glad I had
more than proof of concept. No,
well,
it's now in the now the market.
It is the market, but it's a very limited market. It's, if you sit in the Bitcoin and blockchain bubble, it feels like everybody knows what blockchain is. Now go to even places like RSA, one of the biggest security conferences in the world, and start talking blockchain or Bitcoin. Half of the people don't have a clue what Bitcoin is or blockchain, because they don't need to. Go to Mobile World Congress, the big mobility conference
in Barcelona.
Barcelona. I was there last month. I went through almost all the stands, and hardly any telcos had anything to do with blockchain. It's much better than last year, where I had like 2 people that understood what I was saying, but that is really shifting. And so Bitcoin is interesting. I think that we need banks to start treating Bitcoin or take custodianship over Bitcoin and create spot crediting solutions, so that when you try to pay with Bitcoin, they extend a credit to you, trusting that you will actually provide them with the money, the way that they do it with Visa, where Visa settles 72 hours after the transaction occurs, but the merchant gets notified that he will get the money immediately.
What are the lessons that you've learned now in blockchain? What have you seen that maybe 2 years ago you would have tried it and you now would say, this is a failure that we've had, we don't need this anymore? Lessons learned.
Lessons learned. First and foremost, you don't need to understand what blockchain is.
No.
It's one
we can
of
all
those
go
funny
home.
things. Yeah, I mean, it's one of those funny things. Do you ever come to your banker in your bank and say, well, now explain to me, how does loan onboarding work? Do you use TurboCar or do you use some other system? Or do you go to your mobile provider and say, so which BTSs do you use? I mean, how many of you know what BTS is? Probably nobody here.
So we don't have to educate the world necessarily.
Absolutely. If my mother will need to understand blockchain in order for her fridge to work, we failed. I want to see a world where we hide blockchain and it proves, it's funny, I'm a security and privacy researcher, and my PhD was on usability of security and privacy tools. 5-6 years later, I'm here on stage saying, you know what's most important? Usability and user design and user experience, and that's the same thing with for blockchain. We need to have user experience that is much better, because that will improve the adaptability. I think that will also, if we had better wallets, we would have much